As you can see, I'm surrounded by green. Well, I'm not surrounded by green, but we are sponsored by the good people at Wash and Go today. The lovely people at Wash and Go. What I'm on about, good people. And people often say to me, Mark, is it not hard being a Wash and Go ambassador? And I always have to reply to them like this. Being a rocket engineer is hard. Just ask Elon Musk. Being Manchester United manager is hard. Just ask the 4 managers that have taken over since Sir Alex Ferguson. Being an NHS worker, that's hard. Heroes. That is really hard. But being a shampoo ambassador is as easy as taking a bath. It really is. So next time you're having a really hard day, just run a bath, light some candles, put on some relaxing music and lather up with Wash and Go. Classic Wash and Go. You can pick up your bottle at any good retailer or by hitting the link in the description and getting it delivered straight to your door. Thanks very much to Wash and Go for supporting the United Stand. Now let's move on with the show. And remember, Wash and Go, it's invisible. It's invisible. How does he not salvage this situation? I don't think the situation is salvageable at all. But interestingly, the spin still continues. You know, I think we're spinning out of control, and I think that you've got Andy Cole, ex-player, coming out today saying that the criticism of Ollie isn't very nice. You've got the mainstream media attacking Roy Keane for criticising Harry Maguire, and so the spin continues. And I think that the reality is we're just going to see a lot more of that spin. The club is not in a great situation. Now, I was speaking to somebody this morning, and basically the situation I asked was, well, look, you know, you've got contacts in the club. What's going on in the club at the moment? Because as fans, it looks like the big plan was to leave the fans to moan for 9 days and then come back and pretend nothing's happened. And ultimately, what I was told is that was probably the strategy of United, not to face up to the problem, but they're also looking at other things. They're not convinced by Solskjaer, but they're sort of stuck with Solskjaer because of what the way I would explain it from the conversation I had this morning. If you want an analogy for it, it's like, well, you know, you're in an unhappy marriage. You know, you don't really want to be with the person you're married to, but you've made the vows. It's like, you know, you're still very early in your marriage, and it's like, let's try and work our way through it for the kids. And we as the kids are the fans, and we're probably saying, to be honest with you, I'd rather you break up. But the reality is that is what United are doing. They know that this is not the right relationship, but they can't find somebody else to go and marry or do whatever they want to do with. So they're just going to stay at home with Ollie for the moment. Now, that's not a great situation for us, the fans. It's not a great situation for the club to put themselves in. It's an even worse situation for Solskjaer, because when you decide to stick with Solskjaer, the club aren't sure of him. The fans aren't sure on him. Well, they are sure on him. They don't want him. The media know he shouldn't be there. The players probably know this as well. For Solskjaer, it's out of control and it's mission impossible. And, you know, this morning they're talking about, I'll actually tell you what the article was, because I think it's a good point to bring in at this point when we talk about players. This was from ESPN. Donny van der Beek, Anthony Martial, Jesse Lingard, Dean Henderson, Eric Bailly, Diego Dalot, Juan Mata, Alex Telles have all complained that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is not rotating his squad enough after he promised to give them more minutes this season. Well, look, you could add Jadon Sancho into that list as well. But I think that, you know, when you go through that list, Van der Beek, Martial, Lingard, Henderson, Bailly, Dalot, Mata, Telles, all complaining that they've not been given the game time they were promised. I can pretty much guarantee each one of those were promised game time. I don't agree with them all getting game time. I mean, Henderson over De Gea shouldn't happen, but definitely there was this rumour that Henderson was going to be the number 1 goalkeeper. So, yeah, he has been misled. Van der Beek's been misled. Mata, why did he sign a contract? He must have been misled. Eric Bailly signed a new contract. He would have been free this summer. Why would you sign a new contract? Jesse Lingard could have gone to West Ham. Lingard must be kicking himself. He was star player almost at West Ham. They're in the top 4 and he's sat on the bench at United. He's made a right error there, but he must have been misled. Telles as well. Anthony Martial. There's loads of players that have been misled. And the thing is, you know, the obvious thing would be to say, oh, you know what? He could pick those players against Watford at the weekend. But to do that, you've got to drop Ronaldo. You've got to drop Bruno. You've got to drop Rashford. You've got to drop Greenwood. You've got to drop Fred. You've got to drop McTominay. You've got to drop Shaw. You've got to drop Maguire. You've got to drop De Gea. You know, the changes are not... He's coming back. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is back, by the way. We've seen the photos this morning. But, you know, if he'd have actually trained the players last week, he would have been training Lingard and Van der Beek and Sancho, and maybe would have seen something in them that he thinks, oh, I want to start them. Now, that doesn't mean he won't use them against Watford, but everybody's back training together now. You know, I think only the England players will be back tomorrow, but I wonder how we're going to roll from here. The fact is we shouldn't be rolling from here, but I wouldn't say we have to move past that assumption or mindset. But he's got a really difficult job on his hands. Like there's next to no patience left for him, and that's across the board as well. And the players, and he's got to come back and inspire from a position of total weakness. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it happens. Pranay says the next few matches we can watch without much stress. If we win the games, nothing better than that, and that's what I hope for. But if we lose, then we will win in the long run. Surely we can't perform worse, says Pranay. Well, there is this belief that United want to get through to the end of the season. I mean, let's talk about the managerial situation at the moment. Solskjaer returns, Zidane and Rodgers wait, and that is very much the situation. Brendan Rodgers, without being categorically sure on this, the indications are that Manchester United have spoken to Brendan Rodgers in some capacity and that he would be willing to come to Manchester United. The safest bet is that he'd like to come in the summer, which is what most managers would like to do. But that isn't always the best scenario for everybody. I think United ideally would like to see Pochettino sacked by Paris Saint-Germain and get Pochettino at some point, and I think they would jump on that chance if they could do. But that would mean sticking with Solskjaer for as long as possible. Now, people say, well, that's not possible to get to the summer with Solskjaer. I mean, it shouldn't be possible, but it shouldn't be possible that he's still here now. So, as I said, you look at the next few games, we've got games every 3 or 4 days. That takes him to Christmas. You get to Christmas, you're into January, you know, February. He might be able to limp on till then. My concern with Solskjaer limping on till January, until the summer, is that they'll just go, let's try again and stick with him because it's cheap. If they can't sack him in November, why would they sack him in May? So I think maybe United are looking to get to the summer. I wouldn't be surprised with that. But, you know, the same problems that have been trodden and said so many times is, well, Pogba's gone in the summer. Van der Beek will be gone in January. Ronaldo might leave if we don't get Europa League football. The damage done by keeping Solskjaer could be really catastrophic for this football club. I mean, look, I think if you look at it, before we move on, if you look at the situation of the football club, I don't think it's in a very good situation. I personally think protests shouldn't have stopped. I don't know what the protests stopped for at the end of the day. And I'm not just talking about people turning up at the ground. I mean, there was a lot of things going on in relation to... lots of things were going on. And I'm not going to mention what they are because I don't know whether the club knew they were going on. So, you know, they might get resurrected. We don't know. But lots of things were going on and it all ground to a halt. And it ground to a halt because the season ended and United started buying Sancho and Varane and people got, you know, Ronaldo, and people forgot about the protests. And also we had this meeting with Joel Glazer, which, you know, nobody really knows what all that was all about, but it seemed to shut it all down. Then we hit the start of the season. We were like, we've got Ronaldo. This is the perfect storm. Let's go and deliver. Last dance season, everything la-di-da. And it's gone wrong. But we could be back in a worse situation than we were in May, next May. And I don't want to be scaremongering, but we could be in a worse situation in May this next year than we were in this year. And people say, well, we won't be because of a Super League. But I'm talking about Man United. We could, things could go very, very, very wrong very, very quickly. You lose Ronaldo, you lose Pogba, you lose Van der Beek. You've got to spend money to replace those players. How much would it cost to replace Pogba, Van der Beek and Ronaldo? We got Ronaldo cheap, apart from his wages. Pogba's walking out the door for free. It costs a lot of money and we need a CDM. So you could see the situation getting a lot worse than it is now. And I think